Hello my dear students. So I am going to continue with the extra questions and now we will be discussing some extra questions on reproduction of man. Extra question 26. Structure of the female reproductive system is given below. So you all know the parts of the female reproductive system and the structure is given here. Identify the parts labeled in the diagram. So parts are labeled there, you all can identify them. We will start from structure A. The first structure, structure A, with the different types of or different stages of developing follicles as well as the primary follicle. So what is that? That is the ovary. So structure A is ovary. Then structure B, you can see here, now ovary is connected to the uterus. Then from the uterus you have the fallopian tube. The end of the fallopian tube, which is a funnel-like structure with finger-like projections. What are those? Those are the fimbria. So structure B is fimbria. Then what is C? So I told you all this is the fallopian tube. Fallopian tube. Fallopian tube. Then we have D. Now here you can see this part is the uterus. So uterus, D is uterus. What is E? The uterus has three parts. What are they? The top part is the fundus, middle part, this is the fundus part, this part is the body, and here we have the cervix. So E is cervix. After cervix, what is that? It is the vagina. Vagina, or there is another name for vagina. What is it? Endocervical canal. So vagina or endocervical canal. Vagina or the endocervical canal. Then what is G? You all can see this is the uterus and this part is the wall of, G is the wall of uterus. Wall of uterus. And inside there is the lumen of uterus where the fetus develops. So that's the lumen of uterus. So we have identified all the parts. Part A is ovary, part B that is fimbria, then C is fallopian tube, D is uterus, E is cervix, then we have F that is vagina or endocervical canal. Then we have G that is the wall of uterus and inside H is the lumen of uterus. So I am sure as you all always do, you would have answered them correctly. With that, I'll move on to the next question. That is part of the same question. Here you can see, write two functions of the female reproductive system. So the female reproductive system is shown to you. What are the main functions? If you take the ovary, it is where the ovum develops or the Graafian follicle develops. Inside that the ovum develops and the ovum is released. So development and releasing of the ovum, that is by the ovary, and also ovary produces hormones. You are familiar with the hormones. What are they? Progesterone and estrogen. So those are the hormones produced, and also the uterus facilitates the development of the fetus if there is fertilization. So three main functions. Here we are supposed to write two functions. So I will write one function of the ovary. Can say development and releasing of ovum, that is ovum or egg cell, and also facilitate development of the fetus. After, or we can say we can leave it at that. Facilitates development of fetus. So, you all know only if fertilization takes place, the fetus will develop inside the uterus. So, then the next one. State the hormone secreted by structure A shown in the diagram. So, what is structure A? We identified it as the ovary. I just told you all what are the hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So, state the hormone secreted by structure A shown in the diagram. Estrogen and progesterone. So, those are the two hormones. You all know these two are lipid hormones. So, the functions of female reproductive system, development and releasing of ovum, facilitates development of fetus. You can also write secretion of hormones. You can even give the examples as hormone, estrogen and progesterone. So, that we have written it here. So, with that, we'll move on to the next one. Extra question 27. Given below is the diagram of a sperm. So, here you can see it is the sperm and you can see all the parts of the sperm. You all know those parts. What is X? You know it is the head, and inside the head there is the nucleus that contains the chromosomes, the information needed for the new offspring. Then here we have structure Y, that is the body. In between the head and the body there is the neck, and inside the body the spiral-like structure. What is that? Those are the mitochondria. Mitochondria produce lot of energy that is needed for the movement of the sperm. And then here we have this structure is that is the tail of the sperm. What is that used for? For the movement of the sperm, to propel the sperm to move forward. So then if we look at the questions, identify the parts X, Y and Z that we already did. So X is head, then Y is the body and Z is the tail of the sperm. Head, body and tail. Neck is not labeled there. Where are the sperms produced in males? Where does the sperm production take place? Inside the seminiferous tubules of the testes. That is where the sperm is produced. You can write testes, or to be more specific, you can say seminiferous tubules of the testes. I will write the full answer. Seminiferous tubules of the testes. Then we have two more questions. The third one. Production of sperm is sensitive to temperature. Write an adaptation regarding this. So, you all know the production of sperm is sensitive to temperature. So, what is there in males? The testes where the sperms are produced is contained outside the body within the scrotum or the testis sac. So, that is the adaptation. So, production of sperm is sensitive to temperature. Write an adaptation regarding this. You can say testis is located outside the body within the scrotum. What is the other name? Or testis sac. So, as I always do, students, I am using all the terms in the answer, but you all can stick to one of the terms. The last part. From where does the sperm get its nutrition? Where does it get it? You all know normally the sperm is present in the seminal fluid or the semen. What is semen? It is the secretions from the three glands. Prostate gland, Cowper's gland and seminal vesicle. So, that is a white color fluid that contains the sperms. So, this white color fluid is the one that provides the nutrition for the sperms. That is what we need to write here. So, we can say the fluid that contains the sperm and is secreted by the prostate gland, Cowper's gland, and seminal vesicle. So the secretion is from 3 glands: prostate gland, Cowper's gland, and seminal vesicle. All of them together produce the fluid. From the fluid only sperm gets its nutrition. So if we look at the questions, we identify the parts. X is head, Y is body, and Z is tail. Then the sperms are produced in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. And testis is located outside the body within the scrotum or testis sac because the production of sperm is sensitive to temperature. And finally, the sperm gets its nutrition from the fluid that contains the sperm and is secreted by the prostate gland, Cowper's gland, and seminal vesicle. So I am sure students you would have answered all these questions correctly. With that, we'll move on to the next one. Extra question 28. The function of the female reproductive system starts when a female attains puberty. That you all know, puberty or adolescence, that is influenced by the action of the hormones. That is what we call as the secondary sexual characteristics development. First one, how many days does it take for one menstrual cycle in a healthy female? So only after puberty or adolescence, the menstrual cycle starts. How many days does it take? 28 days. And you all are familiar with the phases or the changes taking place in the ovary as well as the uterus. So it takes 28 days. Then the second question. The changes occurring in the ovary can be divided into 2 stages. Write the 2 stages. What are the 2 stages? The changes occurring in the ovary. So you all know it is a 28-day cycle. First 14 days is the development of the primary follicle to the Graafian follicle. What do we call that? We call it the follicular phase. And on the 14th day, it is the ovulation process where the mature Graafian follicle bursts and the ovum is released. So from ovulation to the last day of the cycle, that is the next 14 days, it is the luteal phase, where the Graafian follicle becomes the corpus luteum and then corpus albicans and fades away if there is no fertilization. So those are the 2 stages. The changes occurring in the ovary can be divided into 2 stages. Write the 2 stages. So we have to say follicular phase and luteal phase. Those are the 2 phases. So it takes 28 days for the completion of a menstrual cycle. During the cycle, there are changes in the ovary and the uterus. Inside the ovary, there are 2 phases, follicular phase and luteal phase. So then we can move on to the next question. Extra question 29. The diagram shows the changes of hormones in the bloodstream during the menstrual cycle. So why in the bloodstream? You all know there are different organs that produce hormones. Ovary is one, it produces progesterone and estrogen. At the same time, you all can remember students, follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone. Those 2 are produced by the pituitary gland. That is the gland present in the brain, within the brain. So from there, the hormones are released into the bloodstream. We will be discussing this in more detail in your next grade, but you all have to remember the hormones are released into the bloodstream. So at that time, inside the bloodstream or within the blood, the hormonal levels will increase. That is in line with the menstrual cycle. So the changes take place according to the amount of hormones or levels of hormones in the bloodstream. So here you can see, students, the green color graph, that is the follicle stimulating hormone, or what we call as FSH, again produced by pituitary. And X you can see is the luteinizing hormone, that is also produced by pituitary, LH. So FSH is green color, LH is blue color. This is FSH and this is LH. And the first 14 days is the, what is that phase? It is the follicular phase. So here it will be follicular phase. So you all know, students, normally in the textbook all these are labeled, but in the question they don't give all the labels, they only give you the graph or the diagram. And here the days are marked and the hormones are marked as X and Y. And what is this phase? It is the luteal phase. So those are the information that you know from this graph. So here you all know FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, is the one that induces the development of primary follicle to the Graafian follicle. Once the Graafian follicle is mature enough, LHS concentration is high and it stimulates the releasing of ovum, that is ovulation. So thereafter both the levels drop and there it is the change of the burst Graafian follicle to corpus luteum and then corpus albicans. You all are familiar with that. So here the first question. Write the names of the hormones X and Y. So we have already identified them, but when you all write, it is better to write the full name. X is luteinizing hormone. I have told you all, students, luteinizing, you can use an Z or a NES, luteinizing hormone, and both have to be capital letters. That is why LH is the abbreviation. Then Y is the follicle stimulating hormone. So X is the luteinizing hormone and Y is the follicle stimulating hormone. Then we have the second question. Name the process that occurs on the 14th day. I mentioned that it is ovulation, bursting of the mature Graafian follicle to release the ovum. So that is ovulation. Then the next question. Write the name of the hormone that influences the process you mentioned above. So the process is ovulation. Name the gland that secretes this hormone. What is the hormone that stimulates or influences the ovulation process? It is the luteinizing hormone. So here hormone is luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone, or what we abbreviate as LH. I have written both the spellings here, students. N-I-Z-I-N-G, N-I-S-I-N-G, luteinizing hormone. And what is the gland? It is the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland. So I am sure you were able to answer these questions. We will move on to the next slide. Extra question 30. Where does the fusion of ova and sperm take place during reproduction of man? Where does the fertilization occur? Now you all can remember, ovary releases the ovum or the egg cell. An egg cell enters into the abdominal cavity. There, with the movement of the fimbria, it is transferred into the fallopian tube. And from the fallopian tube, it moves towards the uterus. At the same time, the seminal fluid or semen is ejected into the vagina by the penis, and there the sperms actually swim through the uterus into the fallopian tube. So if fertilization takes place, it occurs within the fallopian tube. Where does the fusion of ova and sperm take place during reproduction of man? So, fusion of ova and sperm is fertilization, and that occurs in the fallopian tube. Fallopian tube. Then we have the next one. Once fertilization takes place, the embryo gets implanted in the uterus. So, after fertilization, embryo gets implanted in the uterus. Through what structure do nutrients and oxygen are exchanged between the mother and the fetus? After the implantation of the embryo, what happens there? The embryonic membranes are formed. We call it the water bag or the embryonic sac. Inside that there is the embryonic fluid. And between the fetus and the mother, where the embryonic membranes fuse with the wall of the uterus, there is the placenta. From the placenta through to the fetus, there is the umbilical cord. Through this umbilical cord only, the nutrients and the substances are given to the fetus, whereas from the fetus, materials like carbon dioxide and excretory materials come back to the mother. So, that is how material exchange takes place. So, the structure is the umbilical cord. Umbilical cord. Umbilical cord is present in placental mammals, that you all know, that is a feature, placental mammal. The placenta is the one that controls the flow of materials. I am sure you are familiar with that. So, inside the fallopian tube only, the fertilization takes place, and through the umbilical cord, exchange of materials take place. With that, the next question. Extra question 31. What is the name given to the structure that is implanted in the wall of the uterus after fertilization? So, you all can remember, students, there are different structures. Initially, it is the ovum. Once the ovum gets fertilized, what do we call it? We call it the zygote. Then zygote, while it is rolling towards the uterus from the fallopian tube, either the right side or the left side, it will roll towards the uterus, and then it undergoes cell division. So, there at one point we call it the blastula. Then thereafter, that is after about 5 days, it's known as the blastula. And at the end of 7 days, it has a lot of cells, and there we call it the morula. Morula is the one that disintegrates into the uterus wall. And there it becomes the embryo, and then the embryo develops into the fetus. So, here the question is, what is the name given to the structure that is implanted in the wall of the uterus after fertilization? That is the morula that gets implanted. So, here we have to write the name morula. How long does it take for the implantation to occur? So, morula is about 7 days after fertilization. So, it takes about 7 days or 1 week after the fertilization for the implantation to occur. So, here it is 7 days. You all can remember the diagram, students. After fertilization, what happens to the zygote until it gets implanted? So, those are the changes. With that, we'll move on to the next question. Extra question 32. Male reproductive system is shown below. So, you are familiar with the male reproductive system. Label the parts A to G. So, if we look at the parts, you all can see A is labeled here. What is the structure? It is the testis. Inside the testis only, there are the seminiferous tubules, there are the lobules. Inside that, the seminiferous tubules, and inside the seminiferous tubules is where the sperms are produced. So, A is testis. Then what is structure B? Above the testis, we have again the convoluted tubule known as the epididymis. What happens in that? The sperms are temporarily stored within the epididymis. So, structure B is epididymis. Then C. Here we have C. From the epididymis, the sperms are taken to the seminal vesicle by the vas deferens, that is the tubule that transports the sperm. So, that is vas deferens. Vas deferens. Then we have structure D. What is this? It is the prostate gland. There is only one prostate gland. Prostate gland. Prostate gland. Then we have E. What is E? The sperms are taken into the seminal vesicle. So, they are only the secretions of the prostate gland, Cowper's gland and the seminal vesicle together becomes the semen or the seminal fluid. That's why the name seminal vesicle. So, that is seminal vesicle. Seminal vesicle. Then we have the structure F. That is this. That is part of the urinary system. What is that? It is the urinary bladder, or we can write it as bladder. So, here I will write it as urinary bladder. You can also label it as bladder. That is also correct. Then we have structure G. From here you can see from the seminal vesicle the common tubule. It is common to both the urinary system and the reproductive system of man or males. That is the urethra. Structure G is urethra. The other two structures are labeled in the diagram. The scrotum, that is the sac inside which we have the testes in males, and also the penis. That is what ejects the sperms into the female reproductive system. So, those are the parts of the male reproductive system. A is testis, B is epididymis, then C is vas deferens, D is prostate gland, then E seminal vesicle, and F is urinary bladder, and also G is urethra. So, I am sure students you would have labeled all these correctly. With that, I will move on to the next question. Part 2, write the function of part B. So, in the diagram, you can see students, part B, we identified it as epididymis. So, what is the function of epididymis? The sperms are temporarily stored within the epididymis. So, that is what you need to write here. Sperms are temporarily stored. Temporarily stored within the or in the epididymis. That is part B. So then, the next part of the question. A special name is given to the sperm with the secretions from parts D and E together. What is it? What is part D? You all know it is the prostate gland, and part E is the seminal vesicle. We have discussed this. What is the name? Secretions from Cowper's gland, prostate gland and seminal vesicle along with the sperms is what we call as the semen or the seminal fluid. Here I will write both the names. You all can write one of the terms. So, semen or seminal fluid. That is the fluid. Is that okay, students? So, the function of epididymis is to store the sperms temporarily, and the name given to the secretions of Cowper's gland, prostate gland, seminal vesicle along with the sperms is known as semen or seminal fluid. The next question. Why is the testis present in a testis sac? We have answered this type of question before also. What is the reason? The production of sperms is sensitive to temperature. So, the body temperature is too high for the production of sperms. Therefore, it has to be stored external or outside the body inside the testis sac. So, that is the reason. So, we can say the production of sperm the production of sperms is sensitive to temperature, and the body temperature is high. Although it's a 37 degrees Celsius, that is a high temperature. Therefore, or we can say thus, the testis is located outside the body in testis sac or scrotum. Another name again. So that is the reason. Then, what is the function of the secretions from parts D and E? Parts D and E, again you all know, it's prostate gland and seminal vesicle. Along with Cowper's gland, they are the glands associated with the male reproductive system. You all know there are a pair of Cowper's gland and also a pair of seminal vesicle, but one prostate gland. So this secretion is the one that provides nutrition to the sperms, as well as it provides a medium for transport. So two functions. So here we can say provides nutrition to the sperms and also provides a medium for transport of the sperms. So those are the functions of the seminal fluid or the secretions from the three glands. So you all know, students, the production of sperm is sensitive to temperature. Therefore, and the body temperature is too high for that. Thus, the testis is located outside the body in testis sac or scrotum. Then the function of the secretions from part D and E, seminal vesicle and prostate gland, or part D is prostate gland, E is seminal vesicle. Provides nutrition to the sperms, provides a medium for transport of the sperms. So those are the functions. With that, students, we will move on to the next question. Extra question 33. Secondary sexual characteristics of males start to appear with adolescence. That you all know. So, secondary sexual characteristics, adolescence, or in females we normally call it as puberty, and you all know that is due to the influence of hormones. So, when it is the male reproductive system, what is the hormone? It is testosterone. So, the first question, during what age period do these changes occur in males? Normally, you all know, students, males, the changes occur a bit late, that is between 13 to 16 years, that is the age. 13 to 16 years. Whereas in females, you all know, it's usually from 10 to 15 years. Write the name of the hormone responsible for adolescence in males. What is the hormone? Testosterone. Testosterone. And you all know, students, this is a hormone secreted by the ovaries, that is the male reproductive system itself, and also this is a lipid hormone. These are the points that you all have to remember, students. Then the next one. Write two changes that occur in males with adolescence. So if you look at the changes, you all know, students, there is the growth of pubertal hair on the face, then the chest area, armpits, as well as around the genitals. Then the shoulders become wider or they become broader. And also you all know the bones and the muscles starts to grow faster. Therefore, the growth of body is accelerated. The larynx enlarges and also the voice becomes deeper. What are the other changes? The genitals start to grow large and also testes start to produce sperms. Those are the changes associated with the development of secondary sexual characteristics during adolescence of males. So here the question is to write 2 changes that occur in males with adolescence. So you can write any 2 changes. I will write the first 2 changes. Write 2 changes. Pubertal hair grows on the face, chest, armpits and genital areas. The next one I'll write larynx enlarges, the voice gets or becomes deep. In addition to this, you all can also say the shoulders become broad, the genitals grow larger, bones and muscles grow faster, the growth of body is accelerated, and also the testes start to produce sperms. So you can write any of the 2 changes. I am sure you all would have answered this correctly. With that, we will move on to the next question. Extra question 34. Ova and sperms are the gamete cells produced within the reproductive system of man. So you all know ova is one ovum. They are produced inside the ovaries and they are developed inside the ovaries, whereas sperms are produced inside the testes. Where are the gametes produced? So that is the answer. I have already given the answer. Ova, can say ovaries. There are a pair of ovaries and the ovaries function alternately during menstrual cycles. So once the left ovary produces the ovum, the next cycle the right ovary produces the ovum. Like that alternately they function. But testes again, there is the pair of testes, sperms, testes. Testes again, they produce sperms continuously. Inside the testes there is the lobules and inside the lobules you have the convoluted tubules called the seminiferous tubules. There only the sperms are produced. So where are the gametes produced? Ova in ovaries and sperm in testes. The second one, what type of cell division take place during the production of the above gametes? You are familiar with this, students. When we discuss cells, the cell division, there are 2 types, mitosis and meiosis. Out of the 2 types, what is the cell division taking place here? It is meiosis. You all know the reason also. In meiosis, from diploid cell, we get the haploid cell. That is, in man, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and when meiosis takes place, there is only 23 chromosomes in both ovum and sperm. So then when they fuse together, we will have the diploid cell again. So that the number of chromosomes will be maintained from one generation to another. So that is why the meiosis takes place. Meiosis takes place. Then we have the third question. What is the significance of the cell division you mentioned above? I mentioned the significance also. During the production of ovum and sperms or gametes, the chromosome number becomes half, so that when they fuse again, the chromosome goes back to normal. So therefore, the number of chromosomes can be maintained from one generation to the other. That is what you have to explain here. You can say during meiosis, the diploid cells, that is 2N, becomes haploid, N. The gametes are haploid and they fuse together and form the diploid zygote. Therefore, the number of chromosomes is maintained from generation to generation. So that is the significance. So it is meiosis that is taking place. During meiosis, the diploid cells, that is 2N, becomes haploid, N. The gametes are haploid and they fuse together and form the diploid zygote. Therefore, the number of chromosomes is maintained from generation to generation. Why? The zygote develops to form the fetus and thereafter the newborn child. So that you all know. I am sure you would have also written a similar explanation as long as you mention about the diploid cells, haploid cells and the maintaining of the number of chromosomes from one generation to the other, your answer is correct. So with that, students, we will move on to the next question. Extra question 35. Secondary sexual characteristics of females starts to appear with puberty. So that you all know. Puberty or adolescence, then the secondary sexual characteristics develop. We will look at the first one. At what age does the secondary sexual characteristics start to appear in females? What is the age? 10 to 15 years. So 10 to 15 years. You all can remember, students, in males it is 13 to 16 years, but in females it is 10 to 15 years. Then the next question. What are the hormones responsible for the above changes? What are the hormones? You all know there are 4 hormones related to the female reproductive system. Estrogen, progesterone, those are the lipid hormones. They are produced by the ovary itself. And they are the ones that are responsible for the development of secondary sexual characteristics. So, what are the hormones responsible for the above changes? Estrogen and progesterone. Those are the 2 hormones. So, like in males, in females also there are changes occurring during the development of secondary sexual characteristics. What are they? Pubertal hair grows in armpits as well as around genital areas. Then there is a deposit of fat layers in the hypodermis. Because of that, the body becomes fat. And normally you all can see the skin becoming more shiny and more glowing kind of nature. That difference can be observed because of this fat layer. Then the mammary gland starts to enlarge. And also the pubic region becomes wider. So that the uterus and everything enlarges. They are ready to facilitate the development of the fetus. So that is why the pubic region widens. And also there is the accelerated growth of bones and muscles. Bones and muscles grow faster. Therefore, the growth of the body is accelerated. Then there is the releasing of ovum from the ovaries. That means the menstrual cycle starts to take place. So these are all the changes taking place in females during adolescence. So you are supposed to write 3 changes that occur in females during adolescence. We can write any 3 changes. So I will say mammary glands start to grow. Then pubic region widened. Then we can say ovary starts to release the ovum. That is, menstrual cycle starts. So those are the 3 changes I have written down. Mammary gland starts to grow, pubic region widens, and the ovary starts to release ovum. That is, the menstrual cycle starts. But you all can also write the appearance of pubertal hair in armpits as well as around the genital areas, deposit of fat in the hypodermis. So because of that, the body becomes fat. Muscles and bones grow faster. Therefore, growth of body is accelerated. Those are the changes, students. I have written 3 changes here. I have mentioned the other 3 changes as well. So you can write any of the 3 changes. So with that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 36. Where are the sperm mother cells present? So what are sperm mother cells? Now you all know, students, in the male reproductive system, the testis is there. In the testis, there are the lobules. Inside the lobules, you have the seminiferous tubules. On the surface of the walls of the seminiferous tubules, you get the sperm mother cells. From those cells only, the sperms are produced. You all can remember the structure as well. We have looked at diagrams before. So where are the sperm mother cells present? They are present inside the seminiferous tubules. So we can say they are present in the seminiferous tubules. So inside these seminiferous tubules only the sperms are produced, or you can even say seminiferous tubules of the testis. So here we have given the complete answer. All the parts of the system is explained there related to sperm mother cells. Then the second question. Where are the sperms stored temporarily? A common question. You all know the answer to that. Inside the epididymis. So here the answer is epididymis. Then the next one. Write the name of the tube that carries the sperm to the seminal vesicle. So from the epididymis, what happens? The sperm is carried to the seminal vesicle through the vas deferens. That is the tube. So it is vas deferens. So I am sure, students, you were able to write all the answers. The sperm mother cells are present in the seminiferous tubules of the testis, and the sperms are temporarily stored in the epididymis, and also the vas deferens takes the sperms from the epididymis to the seminal vesicle. So with that, we will move on to the next question. Extra question 37. What are the glands associated with the male reproductive system? You are familiar with those glands. There are 3 glands. What are they? One prostate gland, a pair of Cowper's gland, and also a pair of seminal vesicles. So that is what you need to write here. You don't have to mention the pair. You need to write the glands only. So we have the prostate gland, Cowper's gland, and seminal vesicle. Students, you can also write it as pair of Cowper's gland and pair of seminal vesicle. That is also fine, but it is not a must. Then the next one, write the function of the above glands. What is their function? They secrete a fluid that contains the sperms and provide nutrition to the sperm and facilitates transport of the sperm. So here we can say they secrete a fluid that provides nutrition to sperms and facilitate the transport of sperms. So the two main functions, they provide nutrition and they facilitate transport of the sperm. Then we have the third part of the question. Write the name of the organ that ejects the sperms into the female reproductive system. That you all know. From the seminal vesicle, it is the urethra that takes the sperms or the semen into the penis, and penis is the one that ejects the semen or the seminal fluid into the vagina during copulation. So write the name of the organ, that is the penis. Then the fourth one, into what part of the female reproductive system are the sperms released by the structure you mentioned above? So into the vagina of the female reproductive system. Vagina. Another name for vagina, endocervical canal, or we can say endocervical canal. Canal. I am sure you have answered these questions, students. So here you can see the glands associated with the male reproductive system, prostate gland, Cowper's gland and seminal vesicle. The function of the glands, they secrete a fluid that provides nutrition to sperms and facilitates the transport of sperms. And the structure that ejects the sperms into the female reproductive system is the penis, and also it is ejected into the vagina or the endocervical canal. So those are the answers to these questions. With that, students, we will move on to the next question. Extra question 38. Write the two zones present in the cross section of an ovary. What are the two zones present in the cross section of an ovary? You all can remember that it is a oval shaped rod-like structure. In that we have the cortex and the medulla. Medulla is in the middle. This part is medulla and outer side is the cortex. So you are familiar with that. In the cortex only we have the primary follicles and all those, they develop, and the Graafian follicle usually comes towards the periphery of the ovary. You are familiar with that. So write the two zones present in the cross section of an ovary. You have to write cortex and medulla. Then the second question. Write the stages of the follicles present in an ovary. What are the stages? You all can remember, students, in the fetal stage itself, the ovaries contain the primary follicles. Usually there are about 200,000 to 400,000 primary follicles. And after adolescence, the primary follicles develop. They become the Graafian follicle. Then Graafian follicle bursts open and releases the ovum on the 14th day of the cycle, menstrual cycle, that is ovulation process. After that, if fertilization doesn't take place, the Graphian follicle becomes the corpus luteum, and the corpus luteum becomes corpus albicans, and thereafter it fades away. So those are the stages: primary follicles, Graphian follicles, corpus luteum, and corpus albicans. So write the stages of follicles present in an ovary. Primary follicle, then we have the Graphian follicle, then we have corpus luteum and corpus albicans. So those are the different stages. And you all also know, students, Graphian follicle, we have the developing Graphian follicle, mature one, then the burst Graphian follicle. But we don't have to write all those. We need to just include all the main stages, the different names only. So then, part 3, there are 2 ovaries in a healthy female. How do they function during menstrual cycle? How do they function? They release the ovum alternately. That is how they function. So they release the ovum alternately. So that is how the ovaries function in a healthy female. Then the 4th one. What happens to the ovum released by the ovary? What happens to the ovum released by the ovary? It is released into the abdominal cavity there with the movement of the fimbria, the funnel-like, finger-like projections in the funnel-like structure of the fallopian tube. The ovum is directed into the fallopian tube. There it moves towards the uterus. Then only it undergoes fertilization if there is a sperm. So what happens to the ovum released by the ovary? Due to the movement of the fimbria, ovum is directed into the fallopian tube. Ovum is directed into the fallopian tube. So that is what happens to the ovum that is released by the ovaries. So I am sure, students, you answered all these correctly. The 2 zones present in the ovary, cortex and medulla, then the primary follicle, Graphian follicle, and the corpus luteum and corpus albicans are the different stages. Then the ovaries release the ovum alternately, and the released ovum is directed or transferred, you can say. Instead of redirected, you can even say transferred into the fallopian tube with the movement of the fimbria. So that is what happens to the ovum. With that, I will move on to the next question. Extra question 39. Uterus and ovary are 2 important parts of the female reproductive system that you all know. Write their location in the female body. What is their location? You all can remember, students, uterus is present in the pubic region, below the abdomen and between the legs. That is the pubic region. I have explained that to you all. Uterus, pubic region. Then ovary, that is also in the pubic region but closer to the lateral walls of the pubic region. Closer to the lateral walls of the pubic region. Then, the next question, write their main functions. What is the main function of uterus? facilitates the development of the fetus. That is where the baby or the fetus develops, that you all know. Facilitates the development of the fetus. Then what is the function of the ovary? There are three main functions for the female reproductive system. One is for the uterus, facilitates the development of the fetus. Other two, development and releasing of ovum, as well as production of hormones. What are the hormones? Progesterone and estrogen. Those two are carried out by the ovary. So here we can say development and releasing of the ova because there are the ovaries, and production, or you can say secretion of the hormones estrogen and progesterone. The two important hormones. There are two more, LHS and FSH, but they are produced by the pituitary gland. You all have to remember that. 4 hormones are related to the female reproductive system. Out of those, estrogen and progesterone, the lipid hormones, they are secreted by the ovary. But the LH, luteinizing hormone, and FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, they are not produced by the ovary. They are secreted by the pituitary gland. You all have to remember that, student. So I am sure you would have answered these correctly. Uterus is present in the pubic region. Ovary is present closer to the lateral walls of the pubic region. And the function of the uterus is to facilitate the development of the fetus, whereas ovary, development and releasing of the ova, and also the production of the secretion of hormones, estrogen and progesterone. I am sure you would have answered them correctly. With that, the next slide. What is the function of fimbria? What is the function of Primphimbria? When the fimbria move, the ovum is directed to the or transferred into the fallopian tube. So, we can say transfers the released ovum into the fallopian tube with its movement. That is the function of fimbria. Then we have the next one. In what part of the female reproductive system does fertilization take place? So you all know, students, the ovum enters into the fallopian tube. It moves towards the uterus. At the same time, into the vagina, the sperms are released or ejected. So from there, the sperm travels towards the uterus and through there into the fallopian tube. So within the fallopian tube only the fertilization takes place. So in what part of the female reproductive system does fertilization take place? Inside the fallopian tube or inside the fallopian tube. I am sure you would have answered these two questions also correctly. So with that, students, I will end this chapter, and in the next chapter also I will be discussing some more extra questions.